Today is the third day of the September 88 7-day retreat. Yesterday's talk on fear brought many responses in meetings. So there's lots of things to go into. Also, of course, we ended the talk by saying we hadn't really gotten to the root of fear, the root bottom source of fear. Which is inevitably connected with a sense of self. And we'll have to talk about that. At first, I want to mention a few things that were brought up in meetings, and also say that if you do not completely recognize your question, don't feel that you have not been understood, misunderstood, or not correctly understood. For one thing, I do not remember questions verbatim, and between the last meeting and now, the question may have undergone some change, maybe due to other people asking very similar questions. So here are some of the things that were said and that we went into. One person saying, fear isn't the problem. The real problem is the fear of fear. Being afraid of that state of fear in which I'm not accurately responding to people, which I cannot see them clearly. When I'm afraid of someone, I know the relationship is not going right. I may respond in a hurtful way, may destroy the relationship. And that's what I'm afraid of, the state of fear for what it does. Realizing full well that as there is the fear of fear, it only compounds the whole problem. We touched upon that yesterday, saying that the state of fear as experienced, the symptoms of it, the whole organismic sensations, feelings, emotions, tensions, no matter what set it into motion, itself becomes now a signal that something is to be afraid of. And anytime we feel or think that we have to be afraid of something, we think. That's our instrument of dealing with practically any problem. Beginning to think about it, try to think, or repress the thoughts about it altogether. But if we continue to think about the fear and being afraid of fear, or being afraid of something, these physical symptoms continue and are augmented because the body responds to every single thought in one way or another, very often in ways that feel very uncomfortable, painful. And then, of course, if it's pleasurable thoughts, responding in very pleasing, pleasurable ways. One person said that none of the fears that you listed as really anything that is a problem to me. What I'm afraid of most is myself. And in asking to expand a little upon that, the person said, the fear that it really won't do any longer to blame others, find fault outside, but that I am responsible, and the fear of that responsibility. For one's actions and thoughts and speech. In the most fundamental sense, this is true. We are responsible for ourselves. We can find cause and effect relationships between what's going on now and what happened in the past. All of us, all humanity, is a result of the past. Of the whole past. In one way or another, as we sit here right now, listening or attending or dreaming, we are the result of everything that's ever happened throughout the history of life. And further back, history of the universe. That result sits here. Are we continue to act as results, which is mechanical, automatic? Or can there be a fresh action, which is not dominated by the past? Albeit that our whole organism, brain, heart, blood circulation, everything is the result of the past, and to function properly cannot forget about the past. The memory is built into the functioning of this organism. There are things actually happening in this organism we don't even aware of, are only slowly becoming aware of. In scientific research, the layperson doesn't know, and the scientist can't directly feel it. It's all deduced and analyzed in the laboratory. Amazing story I read not too long ago. Time magazine had quite a good coverage on our immune system. It was just like reading a detective story, how that works. It works, it takes place unless it is sick, diseased. And we don't know a thing about it, and yet we think we are in control of our life. So when we say, can there be a fresh new action which is not dominated by the past, we mean all our memory of what happened in relationship with each other. All our imagery which influences our relationship, our feelings about ourselves, and therefore our fragmentation, dividing ourselves up into categories according to how we think about ourselves and each other, and so forth. We'll go into that more later. So, am I really acting responsibly right now? Or is the past responding? Or is there a responding right now to what is seen clearly in each other? Or is there an automatic response to the memory images that come up about what you did yesterday to me or 5 years ago? To act responsibly, we have to open our eyes, we have to look and listen. Is one afraid of that? The person with whom we were talking said, we're so attached to our lazy habits. Which means not looking, not listening, just proceeding in a routine groove of thinking and talking and relating. For a while it goes well, but when there's difficulty and conflict, then we want a remedy. And there may be no remedy other than looking what this groove is and the attachment to it, and whether that has to continue, whether it's inevitable. And someone is saying, no, it is not. When there's looking and listening clearly, there needs to be no action out of the groove in our relationship with each other. There can be a freshness of meeting and seeing each other, talking with each other, working with each other. But the grooves that are there have to be seen. If they're not seen, they run automatically, mechanically, unconsciously, or subconsciously. So that was fear of myself, the person put it that way. One person said, I don't agree with your use of the word fear. I would reserve that word fear for when there's a real danger, seeing a real danger and whatever comes up in the face of that real danger. What you're talking about, just thinking about imaginary dangers projected from the past into the future, that the feelings that come up with that, I would call anxiety. We don't have to attach to words. If it clarifies to use different words for different situations, then we'll do it. And yet we can still look, how is it when a real danger is faced, is there, is seen? One walks across a highway, or maybe the corner of a street, and suddenly a car turns that corner that one is just left from. One will accelerate or run, not to be hit by that car. And that can happen so instantly that no thought or scarcely a thought has arisen. There wasn't even room for fear. The action and the seeing were one process. And amazing stories of people in fires or floods who pull drowning people out of a flooded river or people out of a burning house with an amount of energy and sure-footedness that often the people themselves afterwards are amazed at where did that come from. These were cases of seeing something very clearly, and with clear seeing in the face of a crisis comes tremendous energy and right action, and in no time lost for thinking and fearing. It's afterwards that when one sits down and reflects upon the whole incident, fear may come, thinking, my God, what could have happened to me? Or what if this happens again? Somebody mentioned also in a meeting having recently done some mountain climbing and having chosen a trail or path which went crisscrossing over a mountain stream, and the crossing was over log bridges. He said the first few bridges were all right, they weren't very high, and then there came one which was very high. And he says, I'm afraid of heights. I had a backpack on, and I sort of managed on the way up. But there was considerable fear. Maybe is that where we use the word fear? The rapid river there is there, and one can very easily slip off of that rock, of that log. At best get totally soaked. At worst break a leg or whatever. I asked him how it was on the way back, and he said he didn't take that path again. Which I think if one realizes one is shaky crossing that thing, because the shakiness comes from the thought, I'll fall down. No matter how realistic the danger is, there are people who would love that challenge to go across that log. Acrobats. They do that all the time for a living. And in the mind of the acrobat, surely there isn't the thought, oh my God, I'm going to slip this time or the next time or so. You couldn't be doing that kind of thing. So even in a case where the person said that's more appropriately used with fear because the danger, the word fear because the danger is right there, there may not be fear because there's no thought of falling, hurting oneself. And therefore, walking sure-footed as one walked sure-footed over the lower elevation or on a log that is on a road. Myself had an experience with this. Whenever we visit in California, there's a lovely little park trail which has this kind of thing too. Logs across a stream, but none with that height. I would never cross it. I wouldn't even attempt it. It's the lower ones even that show up so well that the moment there's the thought, I may slip, there is the slipping starting. Whereas if the attention is completely in the feet and each footstep, then there is no fear of slipping and no slipping. Can't say 100% because the next piece of log may be wet mud and there may still be slipping, but is not feared ahead of time. And so less chance, because there's no thought about it. One person said, one may misinterpret what you say. Hear it like it is thought that causes the fear. And if there is no thought, then there is no fear and no danger. Therefore, if we manage to be without thought, then we can live without fear and without danger. Because this is not meant in what I said. The person used the example of the nuclear holocaust. If one doesn't think about it, one may not be afraid about it, but there is a reality of nuclear armaments being stored by not only in enormous quantities by 2 countries, but by more and more countries. These are facts. So to be, and that the volatility of tempers, terrorist tempers that are manifesting throughout the world seems to be increasing all the time. Fanaticism to die for one's country willingly because one will be rewarded with an instant trip to heaven. And all of us have lived through, in greater or smaller proximity to political systems which are based on such false ideas, false goals and ideals, and the fanaticism of pursuing those. The total turning around of human values, that it is for the sake of one's own race, for the good sake of one's own race, to eliminate another which is blamed or branded as evil, manifestation of evil. Therefore, the justification of eliminating that race. And people believing it because the indoctrination is so clever and powerful and constant. So there are real dangers, which admittedly, if one is removed from it, the only way of being in touch with it is through reading, seeing media, talking with others, not in immediate contact with it. So, can one see danger, not avoid looking or being familiar with danger, the dangers that are caused by the human mind, and the possibility of the human mind to be totally twisted and distorted, unable to think straight, clear, intelligently, truthfully. That possibility exists. We're totally conditionable. And the immense danger of that. Not only are we totally conditionable, but we are conditioned, and that in itself is a danger. So can one come back home and study one's own conditioning and what it does, how it distorts and prevents truthful perception, and wonder if it can end, if it can be seen through and not be there impeding perception and thinking and acting and relating. Because anything and everything that happens throughout the world happens because of an organism like this that sits right here. twistable, conditionable, incitable in its emotions, through thoughts and ideas and pictures. So one can study what ails and threatens the entire world by studying. By that I mean observing directly, with open eyes and ears, what ails oneself and threatens our relationship from moment to moment. That's the beauty of this work, that it not only can, but has to happen here. To crusade around in the world with a blind mind, what good is it? March and boycott and picket and move in movements with slogans and posters and enormous fundraising. It can do so little if we who are the members of that movement are not clear, if we're confused. We are, at the same time that we're trying to promote peace, we're also promoting confusion, if we've confused ourselves. And it never fails to happen, and then conflicts among the members or the leaders, and then splitting up into new groups and so forth. Please, if what is said isn't clear, hasn't been followed through enough, or you want to start it over again, that's what meetings are there for. One person or two were somewhat apologetic for asking something for the second time. Please ask it for the 100th time or the 1000th time, because then it may come clear. I don't remember that we talked about, or if I do that, it's irrelevant. What is irrelevant, that we look at something freshly now, and in that there is joy and energy. I don't feel bothered by it at all if it is a real, serious inquiry to people partaking of it. I almost know of nothing better to do with each other or together, other than taking a walk, maybe, and not saying anything, except just look at the marvelous hills or the fragrance of this wet earth. Isn't it a gorgeous morning? So, can we come back now to the question at the end of last talk, and we mentioned it this morning. What is the bottom root of fear? We have established, I think, and see to some degree or other, that thought is like that, connected with fear. That without thought there is no fear. And there's no thought when there's no memory of something. If one has completely forgotten a frightful situation, then there is no memory that will elicit fear now. And of course, involved in all thinking, which elicits fear, is also time, the time of when it happened, and the future for which I'm afraid. Thought creates time, and fear is always connected with thought and time. Check it out for yourself. What will happen to me implies not now, but the next moment. thought of the future elicits fear, or maybe looking forward to something pleasurable, then it elicits pleasure, pleasurable sensations. No one mentioned in the meetings the fear of dying, fear of death, or if one looks at it more closely, the fear of not continuing as what I know myself to be from my past recollections, which are condensed in our mind as a story of our life, is the accumulation of all of our past memories, experiences, wonderful ones, good ones, bad ones, fearful ones, and so forth. And the desire for this story to continue, or the fear of this story to come to an end. Again, connected with memory and thought and the future. Can one verify that there is fear, anxiety about not continuing, about ending? Which, if one looks closely again, maybe the fear of not continuing with what one knows one has, one's family or profession or possessions. Lovely vacations, not the thought of I won't be able to have that anymore at some time, and then fear or sorrow setting in. Or if one doesn't think even about ending, the fear of failing, of not continuing to succeed. One may always fail, not be good enough. Fear of being rejected, not being loved, losing one's love, or remaining unloved, the fear of that, the sorrow connected with it. Fear of being lonely. Or becoming sick, fear of pain. All connected with the image and idea of me. What I am in terms of ideas and pictures that I have about myself. Not the present reality of listening and breathing and the coolness of the air and the warmth of the sun, the sound of the leaves. That's not a picture, that's just what it is. And it needs to be no picture of someone experiencing that. When there is no picture of someone experiencing that, then the sounds are of infinite depth and color. And beauty. When there's no picture there of me having that or not having something. But it is this very picture, or this series and bundles of pictures of myself, images, that I'm attached to. Addicted to, one can say too. The feelings that arise from thinking about oneself in a certain way is addictive. One has to do it again and again and again. Think about oneself to get good feelings going throughout the organism. or bad feelings. One can be addicted to that too. One person mentioned it to me in this retreat. I've never realized how attached I am to all these negative images of myself. I thought I hated them, wanted to be rid of them, but I realized there's a tremendous attachment to that particular identity. It's marvelous to find this out, isn't it? To see something that is actually so, and not dwell in ideas. I don't like myself, or I hate these images of myself, but to see there's actually attachment to them, which is one of the reasons why they continue and continue to be confirmed. If one is attached to something, one constantly looks for its confirmation and will find it. So if there is attachment to the image of myself as being a moral, upstanding, ethical, whatever person, then obviously I'm afraid of seeing that there is envy or jealousy or anger and violence in myself, and I'm afraid to look. Afraid for the image. All this may sound very trite or repetitive or commonplace, but one has to see it for oneself. That the reason one is afraid to look at oneself is for fear of what one may discover, and that does not correspond to the image of oneself which one cherishes, is attached to. Takes security from and energy from. So seeing that, really witnessing it, having insight into this process as it happens, is it possible to let go of an image of oneself? Or at least to see it clearly as just an image, and therefore a renewed or a new freedom to look what thoughts actually crisscross this mind. Not needing to shut them out anymore, or to hide them, or to feel depressed over them, but to see what thoughts are going on, what emotions accompany these thoughts. One person said, I've never realized the amount of violence in myself. Actually wanting to murder some people who are in my way. You can only see that when you're no longer attached to an image of yourself, of being a peaceful person, peaceful and loving. Not that these aspects are not there at times. We're not talking about that. We're talking about fixed images of oneself which prevent insight into what goes on in this human mind and body. Truthfully, actually, not ideally. Ideas are a total hindrance to truth and honesty. That may sound shocking because we worship ideals. We think without ideals we can't live because they are what uplifts us and keeps us from sinking into the swamp. That's false thinking. These are false assumptions. They prove false if one observes that the ideal prevents the seeing of the truth. And if there is direct seeing, the ideal is not needed. When something is seen directly, completely, it doesn't have to go on. It doesn't have to continue. It loses its dark, compulsive momentum. If we want to put it that way, in the light of insight. So it is because we are so attached to the ideas and images of ourselves and the continuation of that into the infinite future. Because of that attachment, that there is fear of ending, or fear of not being what we are attached to think that we are. Of questioning oneself completely. Not taking anything for granted or for the truth. To put it all aside and start looking. With a new kind of interest and curiosity. Maybe even passion, to find out the truth about oneself from moment to moment. Not just oneself, but human beings. Because in investigating and looking, plumbing oneself, one is plumbing all humankind. Has thoroughly observed and watched and is doing so. It's not a matter of the past, it's a matter of the living present. Then one doesn't have to practice tolerance. It then becomes an artificial enterprise. One understands how people act and react and think out of our conditioned ways. And there's not only profound understanding, but we talked about it yesterday or the day before, then there's the emergence of compassion. And a lovingness that is there when the me is not center stage, but absent, quiet, not energized through attachments to images. So, and not all these images to protect and to defend and to enhance and to accumulate, to make better and so forth. When all of that activity is seen through and drops off, quiets down, then what is there to be afraid of? If I'm going to be hurt, I don't mean physically. Right now we usually can handle physical hurt better than psychological hurt. If I feel hurt psychologically, I can look immediately, what is it that's hurt? And what is revealed is my image. My image was hurt. I wasn't seen or treated or looked at the way I wanted to be seen and treated and looked at. But if I attend carefully to what somebody says, with intensity, attention, there's no image there, and therefore no hurt. A person says something and one listens to it. Maybe what the person says has something to look at. Maybe there's something I did or say that was off, or to be corrected. Mistake. Why should I be hurt about it? Psychologically hurt. It may have hurt people what I said or did. And can one make up? Maybe, maybe not. If one can't, one will. If one can't, one can't. The damage has been done. So will one then mull over it guiltily, remorsefully? And then again, the mind isn't attentive now. So it'll one will put one's foot right into it again because one is so busy with remorse or guilt. Then the curtains are all drawn again. This is easier said than done. We do get hurt. Because if there is no complete attention, there is the image. It is as sure as anything, as sure as the sun rises in the morning. When there's no attention, there's image, and that image will get hurt or flattered. But one can see it instantly, as you can see the sun rise. If you look, you have to look. One person said, I haven't seen the sun rise here yet. It's there. One doesn't have to believe in it. It's there. It rises. So, if there's psychological hurt, it's an indication that there isn't complete attention. But if I'm interested, really passionately interested in this thing, because we get psychologically hurt that we hurt back, align each other with other people to hurt, to get revenge on a small family scale and on the global scale. It all comes back to that. So, personally, I'm passionately interested in find out about this and observe it and watch it as I go. Right now, and maybe I mentioned it already in the talk, the allegations that one candidate is not patriotic or not patriotic enough because that person vetoed a bill that requires every teacher to lead the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag in each classroom. If you come from abroad, you may not believe that. But it's true. I was in a classroom with my grandson recently, and every little first grader had to stand there with his hand or her hand on the heart. I don't know whether all of them knew where it was. Some of them were really misplaced hands. And mumble this mumble that the teacher mumbled in together there. They didn't know what they were talking about. And here was this flag. Some of them were looking around and using a Kleenex or something. And here's one man who's running for president right now, who for some reason vetoed a bill that I don't know all the implications there. It's probably a very complex thing. Somebody from Massachusetts may know better about it. Vetoed that bill that requires every teacher to lead the Pledge of Allegiance. And now this is a juicy campaign issue to say, this man isn't really patriotic. I am, says the other candidate. And the polls, when this thing came out, these polls that are taken all the time now, of the American people, what they feel and think of the candidate. When this issue broke, the polls favored the more patriotic candidate more than the seemingly less patriotic candidate. This is the country of free people, in quotation marks. And what is all of this patriotism other than my country, 'tis of thee? It's the same stuff we went through in Germany, and everybody shakes their head. How could have such a thing happened in Germany? This is how it could have happened. By outdoing each other in patriotism. The only thing we didn't have in Germany was a very inquisitive, obnoxious press, which just digs up all of these things. I'm rambling on right now. Sometimes I have to finish this rambling. Sometimes wondered whether our politicians wouldn't love to have the press system of Russia, where you can't do this kind of stuff, bring out stories. It's much safer to get done what you want to get done for yourself, your party, your cronies, and so forth. The main point of this story is the image of being an American, a patriotic American. How it is inculcated in the little kids so early that they become that. And then if somebody calls an American a dirty name, it'll punch. Become defensive because it's identified with this image. It's me. And the pride and the goose pimples that come up with the anthem. We've often talked about that. We'll see it again when the Olympics start. Maybe they have started. The goose pimples when our boys and girls stand on the top and the national anthem is being played. I put our boys in quotation marks and girls. Then watch whether it doesn't arouse something deeply in one. Hearing that national anthem and the crowning and the gold medal and the colors. It's me, mine, how wonderful. We've won again. And these images are constantly vulnerable to be hurt and have to be defended. So will one watch that in one's daily life? So we don't have to destroy relationship with each other through hurt. It's very serious. I get hurt, I can see it, and I can instantly drop it and it's gone. And tomorrow when I see it, it's gone. We can meet freshly. Or, if I listen to you from the very beginning, I may not even get hurt. It's possible. Something may sort of flicker inside because the connections are there, but it doesn't have to fire. The whole thing can be short-circuited through this attention. People say, well, how do I get that attention? Watch what gets heard. When somebody calls one critically, calls one a name, criticizes or whatever. We can all watch what it is that gets hurt. Unless we want to nurse the hurt, then we can't watch. But if we're interested, it's not so hard to watch it, to see it and to be done with it. We will end here for today.